Thank you for joining us for this webinar on retirement education, brought to you by BenefitGuard. We have two broad goals for today's webinar. First, we want to help you understand how to better prepare for retirement by taking advantage of your 401k plan. And second, we want to help you understand a bit more about saving and investing within your plan. So let's jump right in. Now, what do you imagine when you think of your retirement? Most people think of scenes like this: sandy beaches, a hammock or comfortable chair, a drink in your hand, or 18 holes with a cart. It looks pretty nice, right? Well, now how many people do you think actually get there? Recent studies show that only 1 in 10 Americans is saving enough to be able to retire comfortably, which means that for most of us, those chairs on the beach will be empty. We want to help you avoid a retirement that looks like this, and instead we want to help you create one that looks like you imagined. And most importantly, we want to make it simple for you. So we're going to boil down the education today into 5 things that you can do to increase your chances of retiring comfortably. The first is to know your number. How much money will you need to retire, and what do you want your retirement to look like? Since we're all different, it's only logical that our retirement goals will be different as well. So how do you figure out your number? Well, as a general rule, retirees find that they want 70 to 80% of their pre-retirement income. So for simplicity's sake, let's say you're making $50,000 prior to retiring. It's estimated that you'll need about $40,000 a year for retirement. But the second thing you have to do is account for inflation. $40,000 a year now won't be $40,000 a year when you retire. Inflation has a huge impact on how much you'll need. For example, a cup of coffee today costs you about $3. In 40 years, that same cup of coffee could be $10. 18 holes of golf goes for $80, but 40 years from now, it will go for $261. And a Honda Accord that will cost you $18,000 now will cost you almost $59,000 in 40 years. So that $40,000 that you thought you needed every year is actually $130,000 in 40 years. One of the easiest ways to figure out how much you'll need is to use the simple retirement calculator on the My Plan Connection website when you log in. When you log into the website, you click the piggy bank on the top that says how much to save. Then you click on the retirement calculator link, which can be found in multiple places there. From there, it walks you through 3 easy steps. First, you calculate your time horizon by entering how old you currently are and the age that you want to retire. So let's say that a person's 32 years old and wants to retire at age 67. Second, you enter your current annual salary and how much you think you'll need. Once again, we're going to use $50,000 and assume that we'll need 80% of that at retirement. Lastly, you enter how much you have already saved. Let's assume that you haven't started yet, so we'll enter 0. What percent of salary to contribute? Let's just say that you're planning on contributing 10% of what you make. And finally, the expected rate of return in the 401k. This depends on how aggressive you plan to be, but usually 6 to 8% is a conservative estimate. We're going to use 8%. When you click Next, the calculator generates your retirement goal. That's your number there at the top, $1.34 million. That's how much you need to retire comfortably. It tells you with the fuel gauge that you're only going to make it 3/4 of the way if you keep saving at your current rate. So then you can move each one of these dials and adjust the amount that you save when you retire, how much income you need, or your expected return. As you do that, the tank fills up and you get closer to your retirement goal. You can see here how knowing your number can really affect your decision on how much you save and vice versa. That's why it's important to know your number. Our second point is to save as much as you can. Most experts recommend saving between 10 and 15% of your income if you want to retire comfortably. Now this may seem like a lot, but we've got ways to do it. We need to cut whatever expenses we can to make this type of saving a reality. Why? To take advantage of compound interest. Because compound interest is a powerful thing. Albert Einstein once said that the principle of compounding was the most powerful force in the universe. Benjamin Franklin called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. Now, why is that? Well, for one thing, compound interest can turn something small into something much bigger, like turning a Coke into an Audi. Here's how it works. The average price of a Coke is about $1.89. If you opted to not buy that Coke every day for the next 30 years and put the $1.89 into your 401k, making a return of just 6%, you could buy an Audi A5 when you retire. In addition, you could buy a Coke every day in retirement with the $18,000 left over. If you do the math in this example, you actually only saved $20,000. Compound interest did the rest and turned it into $92,000. That's amazing. Compound interest is the way that you can make retirement a reality. The other reason to save and invest as much as you can is to take advantage of tax savings. When you invest in your 401k, you're investing pre-tax dollars, unless you're using a Roth, which eliminates taxes on the back end. The most immediate impact here is that you actually take home a bigger paycheck than you would if you invested the same amount of money in a savings account or brokerage account. Let's compare the two. On the left, you invest your savings in your 401k. On the right, you invest into a savings or brokerage account without tax savings benefits. Start with $5,000 on both sides. On the left, you make a 10% contribution to the 401k, or $500. That decreases the amount of your paycheck or your taxable income by $500 and makes it $4,500 on the left, but it's still $5,000 on the right. Now you can see how this affects the amount of taxes you pay. On the left, you pay $1,125. On the right, you pay $1,250. This is where the tax savings happens. You can see on the left that your take-home pay is still less, but we're forgetting that we haven't saved on the right. Assume that we put the same amount here into the savings account or brokerage account. We now see the final result. You actually take home $125 more to spend. That's the power of tax savings in a 401k. And you can save more money tax-free in a 401k than just about anywhere else. Compared to a tax-advantaged IRA, where you can only save $5,500, a 401k allows a personal contribution limit of $17,500. This can even get to above $50,000 when you add a company match and profit sharing. The point here is to save as much as you can and put into your 401k so you can take advantage of compound interest and tax savings. Once again, experts recommend 10 to 15% as a goal. And as difficult as it might be, you should do whatever it takes. Cut back on whatever you can to make this type of savings a reality. To introduce our next point, here's a quick cartoon. This guy is sitting down with his financial planner. He says, "I retire on Friday and I haven't saved a dime. Here's your chance to become a legend." Well, if we waited this long to start saving, no financial advisor or product is going to be able to help us. This brings us to the most important principle in retirement savings. To start early, start now. Time is your greatest ally in saving for retirement. Starting now rather than later produces drastic effects and makes saving for retirement much easier. Here are a couple examples. This is another tool on the My Plan Connection website. It is called the Early Start Planner. It lets you see the effects of starting earlier rather than later. So let's say you need $1.5 million to retire comfortably. Here it shows how much you'll need to start saving every month to make that happen. If you start when you're age 20, you only have to save $479 a month. That's doable. If you wait until you're 30, that number doubles and is now $920 a month. That might be doable, but it's certainly a little more difficult. Now, if you were to wait until age 40, you would have to save $1,800 a month. If you wait till age 50, it's $4,200 a month. Saving that much money isn't going to be easy. That's why it's so important to start early. Now let's take a look at another comparison of two people saving the same amount each year. For this example, we'll use Mary and Dave. Mary and Dave each set aside $500 per month for 10 years. Mary started at age 25 and Dave started at age 35. At the end of 10 years, each has invested $60,000, right? But look what has happened to the available balance at retirement age. Mary's balance at age 65 is more than double Dave's balance because she started investing earlier. Even if Dave were to save 3 times as much, or $1,500 per month, he still can't catch up. In the retirement game, time is your most important ally. The moral of the story is to start saving early, or better yet, start saving now. Do whatever you can to make saving a reality so that you can take advantage of time and compound interest. The next point is to increase your savings over time. One of the best ways to do this is to increase your 401k contribution with every raise. Why? Because it's a lot easier to contribute that money to your 401k before you're used to having it in your bank account. Scientists did a study with monkeys to show this point. They started with 2 monkeys with no apples. They gave 1 apple to the first monkey and 2 to the second monkey, but then they took 1 of his apples away. The net result is the same, right? They both end up with 1 apple they didn't have before. But the results with the monkeys were completely different. The first monkey was happy. The second was not so happy because he didn't like losing 1 of his apples. Well, we're the same way with our retirement savings. If you get a raise for $500 and you commit half of it to your 401k before it starts to hit your bank account, you're still happy because you've got an extra $250 per month to spend that you didn't have before. However, if you take the entire raise and get used to spending the full $500 and then try to make the change and take $250 away, it's much harder. And you're much less likely to make that contribution in the future. So, make a plan that every time you get a raise, you're going to commit a portion of it into your 401k before it ever hits your bank account. This is a behavioral finance principle called loss aversion, and it's one of the best ways for you to increase your savings over time and increase the probabilities that you'll hit your retirement goals. The last principle is to invest in the market. In order to explain this point, I want to show you some of the key differences between different types of investing. One investment option is to invest in individual stocks and bonds. This is where you're investing in individual companies. It would be like buying stock in Apple, Google, or Microsoft. There are over 100,000 different stocks and bonds that you can choose from. The reality here is that you are trying to pick winners from 100,000 different companies, and it's not easy. Nor do you have time to constantly do the research to pick winners and avoid losers. In addition, when we buy lots of stock in an individual company, we're putting all of our eggs in one basket. Not only is it too difficult, but it's also too risky. Another option is to invest in mutual funds. When you invest in a mutual fund, you're investing in a small group of companies picked by investment managers. They try to pick winners from the individual companies and put them into groups that you can invest in. The problem here is that those mutual fund companies and investment managers always have to be paid to do that work regardless of how their funds are performing. So, you pay for those costs through your mutual funds, which decrease your net return. In addition, it's still difficult to choose between 20,000 different options, so this option is both difficult and expensive. The last and best option that we want to talk to you about is investing in the market. When you invest in the market, you're using index funds. Index funds are very large groups of securities within an asset class that have been pooled together to match a market index. For example, a very popular index is the S&P 500, which is made up of 500 of the largest companies in the United States. These are both large and reputable. An index fund that mirrors or tracks the S&P 500 would be like the Vanguard 500 fund. Because you're investing in such a large group of companies, it doesn't take an investment manager to be constantly changing things and chasing returns, so these funds are generally very low cost. In addition, because you're investing in so many companies, you have less risk if some of them don't do well. And lastly, there's a lot fewer of these indexes to choose from. Just over 300, which makes investment selection easier. Investing in the market is less cost, less risk, and easier to choose from. This is why you invest in the market using index funds. Ivy League research groups and many of the brightest minds in finance have been saying this for years. This is Warren Buffett, one of the most wealthy men in the world and a very successful investor. He explains why you should buy index funds. Over the 35 years, American business has delivered terrific results. It should therefore have been easy for investors to earn juicy returns. All they had to do was piggyback off corporate America in a diversified, low-expense way. An index fund that they never touched would have done the job. Instead, many investors have had experiences ranging from mediocre to disastrous. Charles Schwab adds, buy index funds. It might not seem like much action, but it's the smartest thing to do. So why isn't everybody doing this? Because the messages to the public from mutual fund companies has been very different. Don't chase returns by trying to pick stocks in expensive mutual funds. Research has shown that the odds of beating the market this way is less than 4%. Instead, invest in the market using low-cost index funds. Now let's take a second to talk about diversification. You've all heard the phrase, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Why? Because if you drop the basket, you've broken all of your eggs. Diversification is when you put your eggs into lots of different baskets. With investments, you want to diversify across asset classes. These here are the major asset classes. You have stocks or equities, bonds or fixed income, money market or cash equivalents, and other, such as real estate or commodities. When you buy index funds, it's important to buy funds in each one of these classes so that your eggs aren't all in one basket. Now here's what diversification does for you. This graph shows a period of time that's often referred to as the lost decade for stocks. Here you see the S&P 500 index, or 500 of the United States' largest and most reputable companies. You can see that if you had all of your money in an index tracking fund, such as this, you wouldn't have made any money over this 10-year period. However, if you had diversified your portfolio across the other asset classes, like bonds, money markets, real estate, and commodities, you would have achieved a very different result, which is also much more favorable. Diversifying across asset classes not only protects you from downside risk, but also increases your chances for better return. So invest in the market using index funds and diversification in order to improve your financial portfolio performance. Now, let's review our 5 simple principles. Number 1, know your number. Typically, it's 70 to 80% of your current income, and don't forget to account for inflation. Remember, you can use the retirement calculator on the website to easily figure out how much you'll need. Second, save as much as you can in your 401k to use compound interest and tax savings to your advantage. Third, start early, start now. Time is your greatest ally in saving for retirement. The earlier you start, the easier it is and the bigger your nest egg will be. Fourth, increase savings over time. Commit a portion of each raise to your 401k before it ever starts to hit your bank account. And finally, invest in the market using index funds. Don't go chasing returns. Your chances of beating the market net of fees by chasing returns is 4% or less. Invest in the market and diversify. Now that's it for today's retirement education. We hope that you enjoy working with BenefitGuard on your new 401k plan. To make the most of your plan, we recommend connecting with us on social media. Follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook to get access to frequent tips on optimizing your personal finances and retirement. We will also answer all the questions that you send in, so feel free to reach out.